What the fuck am I supposed to do for my retarded intros anymore? I have no fucking clue, man. But hey, it's horse beef here. But hey, man, it's another video. I want to talk a little bit about Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan, because I believe this is a very close fight, man. And this isn't my video where I make my prediction. I just kind of want to talk about the fight, the build-up, and in my opinion, the ridiculous degree in which Arman Tsarukyan is being underestimated. And it actually reminds me a lot of the Merab versus Umar Nurmagomedov build-up, because apparently if you're fighting somebody from Khabib's camp, you're not allowed to win, and you're not allowed to pick against these fighters. Otherwise, you're a casual and you know nothing of what you're speaking of. It really begs the question of why does the UFC not just sack the entire roster and just have Dagestanis fight it out if we're not allowed to pick against them, right? I mean, it's fucking blasphemous at this point, apparently, if you were to go based off of the Khabib fans. But no disrespect to Khabib, Islam, all these guys. I actually respect them as fighters. I think they're fucking great fighters. I'm not part of this camp of people that hate them simply because of their religion. But of course, I will be accused of that because you all happen to be soft as absolute baby shit. And I cannot take criticism, even if it pertains to someone who is not yourself, right? Because you live vicariously through your favorite fighters because you have nothing else going on in life, and that's pathetic, man. That's pathetic. But I would like to quickly mention, guys, I'm sorry. I know I'm skipping over probably the most highly anticipated fight of the year in Mackenzie Dern versus Amanda Ribas. I know, man, we're all waiting with bated breath for this fight. I get it, man, but I'm skipping over it. I'm just trying to be contrarian, you know. I'm just going to skip right to the next most anticipated fight card of the year in UFC 311. You know what I'm saying? But let's just get into it, dude. Because the UFC has been uploading a lot of fights, right? Arman's old fights against Charles Oliveira, against Islam as well. Islam's fight against Dustin Poirier. And after rewatching some of these fights, I feel like I've come to, I'm not going to say a complete conclusion on whether I think Arman will win this fight or not, but I just think that the level of disrespect towards Arman Tsarukyan, as I said, it reminds me of the disrespect levied towards Merab, and I think it has everything to do with how elite Islam Makhachev is, but I feel like people are really ignoring Arman's elite skill set, and I think it's all down to MMA math, which seems like the bulk of all arguments that are going around MMA YouTube and MMA, just like MMA internet scene, whatever the fuck you want to call it, whatever space that you particularly fall into, whether you're a Reddit guy or a Twitter guy or whatever the fuck you are, right? It just seems like it's all a bunch of MMA math. Arman couldn't possibly beat Islam because Islam made it look easy against Charles, while Arman went to a split decision with Charles, as if that is even a comparison to make, because styles make fights. And yeah, Arman has a similar style to that of Islam Makhachev for sure, but every fight is different. Every fight is different. But ultimately, I do love these MMA math arguments because they're so brain dead and stupid that I just love to use them in jest. So let's take this logic, right, and apply it to Islam Makhachev, right? Who does he have a loss to? Oh my god, he got KO'd by Adriano Martins. Oh my goodness. Oh my god. So after knocking out Islam Makhachev, he goes on to lose 2 fights to Leonardo Santos and Kayan Johnson, right? A Canadian. Fucking Canadian. So a Canadian has a win over Islam Makhachev is pretty much what MMA math states. Oof. Oh, that was a close one, though, because at least Islam has a win by submission over Kayan Johnson. So it goes around in a circle, and it turns out that Islam is still the rightful belt holder, guys. Like, hold your horses. Hold your horses. Adriano Martins isn't the GOAT anymore. It was Kayan Johnson, but it turns out that it actually is Islam Makhachev. And I know how dumb that entire sequence is, right? Just fucking this guy beat this guy, but this guy beat this guy, though. But yes, you can literally apply that to pretty much any fighter in UFC history, even with John Jones, right? Who's beat Matt Hamill, right? Because Matt Hamill, as we all knew, brutally TKO'd John Jones. So whoever has a fucking win over Matt Hamill must be the GOAT, dude. He must be. They must be. It makes no other sense otherwise. And these MMA math arguments also are so dumb because it's assuming that fighters can't improve. Professional fighters can't improve, right? Isn't that such a limiting mindset? Because one fighter lost a couple of years back, and then another fighter did slightly worse, or I mean, you could say a lot worse than another fighter did those few years back. That somehow means that this fighter is better than that fighter. But Charles Oliveira has improved since then, and he's also gotten bigger. Although I would still pick Islam to beat this version of Charles. I still would. Oh my God, the Charles fans out there are already creasing in their seats, man, just getting ready to leave their disgruntled comments. How dare you, dude? Charles Oliveira owns Islam. You're a fucking nerd. Just shut the fuck up, dude. Shut the fuck up.
Shut the fuck up.
You're such a nerd. And to touch on these MMA math arguments that I keep hearing, right? Everyone likes to talk about, as I brought up earlier, right? Islam made it look easy against Charles, which he did. It was a beautiful performance, dropped him, followed him to the ground, which no one else seems to be willing to do, and subbed him, right? He subbed him. It was beautiful, right? And people like to point to the fact that Charles locked in 2 really deep subs against Arman, but he survived those submissions. What happened with Volkanovski, right? Volkanovski, very beloved fighter. Everyone loves Volk, right? Who could hate Volk? Right, but he was defending his title, and when he was caught in the mounted guillotine against Brian Ortega and survived that, and then was caught in the triangle and survived that, he's such a warrior. What a champion, man. He fought out of those. Charles Oliveira is far more dangerous than Brian Ortega. Arman was in that mounted guillotine real fucking deep, dude. He was in that Dar's pretty deep as well. Charles seemingly thought that he had it locked in. He survived that shit. His pants or his shorts were coming down, dude. He was fighting his way out of that. You see his face. You see the absolute grit, determination on his face, but you ignore that when it's Arman, but you love it when it's Volk. Keep that same energy. Arman is a fucking warrior. This dude comes to fight every single time, and he's not going to give up. And that fight proved it, and in my opinion, he deserved to win that fight. I don't care about the guillotine attempt. In my opinion, the ground and pound elbows from Arman secured that round. Once again, I'm probably going to have to rewatch the fight once again. But for me, I know a lot of people say that Charles got robbed. No, he did not get robbed. A couple of submission attempts that were seemingly locked in, but he didn't finish the fight with them, right? Those, in my opinion, those elbows are doing a lot more to contribute towards the end of a fight, because a submission that's not effective, in my opinion, yes, it's effective grappling, but it should not overshadow nasty elbows from the guard that Arman was landing on Charles Oliveira. But that's just my opinion, and I think that is one position in particular where Arman has a massive advantage over Islam, because there is a massive sample size that shows Arman Tsarukyan has arguably some of the nastiest ground and pound in the UFC. I think since Khabib's retirement, Arman has potentially taken over that and has solidified himself as the guy with the nastiest ground and pound in the UFC. I would recommend going back and watching his fight with Joel Alvarez, and you see how well that win and how well it ages, but also how dominant he was in that fight. Disgusting. Some of the nastiest elbows in the guard you will ever see, and he only needs to be in your guard to generate a lot of power, and that's one thing that I think poses a huge amount of danger for Islam, although less with Islam than with his other opponents, because Islam will be able to scramble back to his feet much more effectively than Arman's past opponents have been able to do. Sometimes Charles Oliveira does find himself being pretty complacent under his opponents, and I think that sometimes, as we saw with Arman, leads to him getting hurt, or in the case of his fight versus Islam, him getting finished. As Islam, for me, he is a lot more dangerous with his submission game. I think his judo is also much, much better, right? I say judo, but then again, it's just sambo, because sambo takes some of the best elements from judo and jiu-jitsu and just and wrestling kind of combines them all, you know what I mean? Similar to how Dutch style kickboxing takes some of the best elements from Kyokushin and Muay Thai, you know what I mean? Like, certain martial arts are just all-encompassing, so it's weird to say judo, because clearly Islam is just a very, very high-level sambo practitioner, which has elements of these martial arts. I digress. Let's move the fuck on, dude. I do think that Islam, with his judo throws, has an extreme advantage here, but Arman, when it comes to the center of the octagon, shooting for takedowns, he has the advantage here. So logically speaking, Islam has the advantage when he has Arman's back against the cage, and Arman has the advantage in the center of the octagon, so you would expect to see Islam on the front foot for the majority of this fight. Although I think it'll just be tough for both guys to take each other down. They're going to have to work extra hard to take one another down because of how high level they both are in the grappling department. I think this one for me will just come down to who has the best gas tank, and you have to go back to their first fight and see. Islam looked like the fresher fighter by the end of it. Arman looked gassed. And the difference here is that this is a 5-round fight, but it's many, many years. Like this was about 6 years ago, I think, and that was also Arman's first fight in the UFC, which he took on short notice. Why are we ignoring that fact, right? Yes, he lost, but he had a very, very close fight. Maybe it wasn't close, right? You could argue that Islam won every round, but at the same time, as I said, short notice at the age of 22 in his first fight in the UFC. That is a huge, huge step up in competition from fighting on the local scene, which he was, right? The domestic scene. Such a huge step up to fight Islam Makhachev, who would go on to become the world champion, right? And at the age of 22, there's a lot of maturing to do, especially in your physical form, right? Your frame. There's a lot of maturing to do. As someone who has been 22 just a few years ago, I can tell you I mean, from personal experience, that the difference in how I feel physically right now between, from back then, right, those few years ago when I was 22 years old, the physicality is just a night and day difference. It really is. I feel it. And you can kind of see with Arman as well. Like, he's always been built like a brick shithouse. Like, he's always been built like an Armenian Michael Chandler, essentially. But if you've seen him recently, the form that he's in, the guy looks like he's in the shape of his life, and he has to come in here with the shape of his life, because this will be a grueling fight. Any fight against Arman or against Islam Makhachev, if you want to survive that fight, you have to be willing to work. These guys are going to make them work. When it comes to the striking department, I think both guys have advantages in different areas. Islam, I believe, has a slight advantage with the hands, although I think Arman probably has more power in his hands. He's a little bit less crisp, but I do think that the narrative going around, I'm not sure if the narrative is being pushed these days, but after the Poirier fight, for example, or after the second Volk fight, like, he KO'd Volk with a beautiful head kick, right? But it was short notice, tubby-ass Volk. He wasn't ready to fight, I don't think. He landed the head kick, yes, he did, and Volk is one of the best strikers in the UFC, sure, but at the same time, permissible circumstances, as Lucas Tracy would say. And I think the fact that he did well to strike with Poirier had a lot to do with Poirier being less active because of the takedown threat. So it's hard to say that he outstruck Poirier because of his striking. I think he outstruck Poirier more because, yes, he's a good striker, but also the extreme takedown threat. And I think it was more impressive to see how well Poirier actually dealt with Islam on the ground. Although I wouldn't take from that and say, well, see, Islam isn't as good on the ground as we thought. But because no, Islam has shown nothing but the fact that he is probably the best grappler in the UFC right now, which is scary considering how much improved his striking has become, although I still don't think he's elite, right? This kind of reminds me of the knee-jerk reaction when Usman picked up a couple of knockouts. Everyone was acting like he's one of the best strikers in the UFC when, like, all he had was a great jab and a good two, right? But the takedown threat is what sets up those shots to land, because when you see him throw anything, right, you see him actually exchange or throw any looping shots. You see him throw actual combinations, any long-winded combinations, and Usman looks like trash on the feet. He looks like an amateur, if we're being completely real. But Islam, in my opinion, doesn't actually fall into that. I actually think he is very, very technical, although I'm sure everyone's saying it, but Arman's kicking game, I think, is much, much greater than Islam's. I think he poses the biggest threat on the feet with his kicks. His lead leg is extremely, extremely quick. He gets that thing up. It's similar to like an Umar lead high kick, or just lead kick in general. He snaps those things up like their jabs, spinning attacks, and I do think he's more diverse on the feet, and he has more power, I would say. So Islam, by no means, has an easy road to victory here. It's going to be grueling. I think whichever way it goes, it's going to take a lot to finish Arman, and it's going to take a lot to finish Islam. And I do think that as I'm analyzing the fight right now, I just see this fight being another beautiful grappling technical masterclass from both men that goes all the way, and it'll come down to those little moments that wins each guy the fight. Although I would hope to see more on the feet, because both men have shown the capacity to gas out. We saw Islam gas out against Volkanovski the first time around, but of course, as there always is, whenever Islam looks less than perfect in a fight, there's always excuses made for him, which I'm not really a big fan of. Like after the Poirier fight, I believe there was some mention of some kind of an injury to Islam. Just before the Arman fight, apparently he was sick and had to vomit all over the place, even though he was able to fight for 15 minutes at a pretty decent pace without puking his brains out, which it's unrealistic if I'm being honest. And then we had the excuse where, like, he won the fight against Volk, right, but it was too close, so there has to be an excuse, right? It has to be the time difference and the amount of time to rehydrate back and all this shit.
In a Saturday night, you will be fight with another Islam Makhachev. He will be stronger, he will be tougher than he was in Australia.
Why? Why?
Because he is in a better shape in February.
Why, you're telling me that him rehydrating for 30-something hours isn't enough? He's going to be stronger with 40 hours? Is that really what we're relying on over here? You don't back your skills? I don't get it. I don't get it. I back my skills. That's the difference. I really don't get it.
I show everything.
It's enough. If these guys are the most elite fighters in the fucking world, which they are, you need to stop making excuses for them. Stop making excuses. They don't need your excuses if they're that good. But at the end of the day, my qualms are not with Islam Makhachev, Khabib Nurmagomedov, or anyone in their team. It's with the fans and the excuses that they make. I can see that Islam tries his best not to feed into the excuse making and making excuses himself, right? So I have the utmost respect for him, and I'm not one of these guys who just hates Dagestani fighters. Islam does not fall under the same category as others do. He's not a crotch sniffer. He is genuinely one of the most elite fighters that we've ever seen in the octagon, and this is going to be an extremely tough test for him, though. I feel, as of right now, I'm not too sure where I stand, whether I'm picking Arman or picking Islam. I understand like the allure of picking Arman Tsarukyan on the chance that he wins, and I can make another video just talking shit and saying I told you so this, I told you so that. But at the same time, like, the logical side of me is leaning towards picking Arman. Right? It isn't just the contrarian side of me. The logical side is also leaning towards Islam. Right? There's a time for everybody, and I feel like this could be the time that somebody besides Adriano Martin's the GOAT, of course, figures out Islam Makhachev. I'm not sure right now, and like I said, this isn't the video that I make my prediction. I will make a more comprehensive, like, full UFC 311 prediction video, so look forward to that one. But for now, I just wanted to lay out my arguments as to how I believe Arman could beat Islam and why I think that this fight is just so much tighter than a lot of people are giving Arman credit for. But at the end of the day, man, as of right now, I'm just going to make my early prediction, and it's Arman Tsarukyan. It's Arman Tsarukyan. I have a feeling in my plums. I have a feeling, deep down inside, that some crazy shit's going to happen here. I feel like Arman might do enough to scrape by a decision. If he's to finish Islam, that would be just a world-shattering event, right? Just to witness. I know we've seen Islam knocked out before, right? By Adriano Martin's the GOAT, of course, as I already said. We already touched on that. But at the same time, we haven't really seen Islam look very vulnerable since then, other than in his second fight with Volk. Really, like, we haven't seen him look truly out of it in so long. So to look at this prime version of Islam and see him get finished would be crazy. It would be wild to witness. But I feel like if anyone's gonna do it in this division, it would be Arman Tsarukyan, right? Powerful, just a fucking ball of muscle, powerhouse, extremely good wrestler in the center of the octagon. Very, very powerful hands as well. Great kicks. I just feel like he has the tools to do it. So as of now, I'm picking Arman, although maybe getting closer to the fight, I'll change up on that. Let's see. Let's just see how it goes, man, because we still are a week out from the fight. Looking forward to it, guys. Anyway, right? I feel like we've been yapping, as the kids say, for a little bit now, and I would like to thank you guys once again for watching my videos. As always, guys, I know I don't know if you guys you think I'm just saying it when I say it, but I genuinely do appreciate the views, the engagement, right? The likes, everything you guys do for me. I know you don't think it's a lot, but believe me, I appreciate the shit out of it. Appreciate all you guys. And anyway, guys, I appreciate you watching as always, like I said, and I'll see you on the next one.